Her ex-husband arrived with his new wife, then froze when a billionaire claimed her with a kiss. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The evening air settling over downtown Chicago felt sharp enough to cut through Lena Hart's thin cardigan as she stepped out of the courthouse, clutching the final divorce papers like they were eviction notices from her old life. Her hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the humiliation still burning inside her because minutes earlier, her ex-husband Michael had walked out with his new wife on his arm, smiling like he had upgraded, while Lena stood there with nothing left but an empty bank account and a small storage unit full of her mother's old paintings. She walked down the steps slowly, each one echoing the truth. She had lost everything. 3 years of marriage dissolved into a signature. 3 years sacrificed so Michael could build his tech firm, only for him to strip her out of the company records, throw her out of their condo, and remarry a woman who looked like she'd stepped out of a Beverly Hills plastic surgeon catalog. Lena inhaled shakily, blinking away the sting in her eyes. She refused to cry on a public sidewalk. Not again. Not tonight. She pulled out her phone and checked her bank app. A pitiful balance stared back at her. Not even enough to cover next month's rent for her tiny studio in Logan Square. She needed a job. She needed stability. She needed a miracle. That was when a shadow fell across the pavement beside her, long, crisp, and unmistakably expensive. A man in a charcoal overcoat stepped into view, tall and composed. The kind of presence that felt like a door closing softly behind you, quiet but absolute. He wasn't looking at her at first. He was studying the street as if he were deciding whether to cross it or buy it. Then his gaze slid down and landed on the papers in her hand. Rough day? His voice was low, smooth, and strangely gentle, like he wasn't used to speaking softly but was trying for her sake. Lena stiffened. I'm fine, she lied, folding the papers against her chest. Just ending things. The man's eyes lingered on the courthouse behind her. Looks like he ended things long before you signed. Her breath hitched. Do I know you? Not yet, he said. And for a moment she wondered if she should walk away until a sleek black SUV pulled to the curb, and his driver stepped out with a quiet, Mr. Hale. Mr. Hale. Lena blinked. Adrian Hale. The billionaire investor. The name was impossible to forget. It was plastered across business magazines, financial networks, skyscrapers. Why would a man like that stop for someone like her? Adrian's gaze returned to her face, steady, assessing, but not unkind. I saw what happened on the steps, he said. Your ex-husband seems very sure he's traded up. He has, Lena murmured, voice cracking despite her best effort. He took the company I helped him build. He took the condo. He even took the dog. Adrian's jaw tightened, barely perceptible. Then maybe it's time someone chose you for once. Lena frowned. What does that mean? There was a short pause, as if he were weighing the consequences of the next sentence. Then, it means I have a proposal for you. And it's not as strange as it will sound. Her heart thudded. A proposal? 3 months, Adrian said calmly. Pretend to be my partner for public events. In return, I'll make sure you never have to worry about rent, work, or your ex-husband's shadow again. Lena stared at him, stunned. A billionaire offering her a deal on the sidewalk? On the night she signed her divorce papers? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. Why me? Adrian's answer was simple. Because you're the first person I've seen in a long time who looks like they deserve a win. And though Lena's mind screamed that this was insane, her heart, tired, aching, desperate, whispered that maybe insanity was exactly what she needed tonight. Before she could speak, Adrian extended a business card, warm from his glove. Think about it until morning, he said. But if you say yes, your life changes right away. Lena watched him step into the SUV, watched the door close, watched the taillights disappear like a promise she wasn't sure she deserved. And for the first time since the divorce hearing began, she felt something other than fear. She felt the smallest, quietest spark of possibility. Lena spent the night turning Adrian Hale's business card over and over in her hands inside her tiny Logan Square studio, a room so small the kitchenette hummed against the mattress whenever the refrigerator kicked on. The words, "Think about it until morning," echoed in her mind like a dare. 3 months. Pretend to be the partner of one of the most powerful men in the Midwest. It sounded insane, impossible, yet the logical part of her knew that everything about her current life was already falling apart. She had $26 left after buying a cup of soup on the way home. The landlord had already slipped a late notice under her door, and she could not ignore the humiliation that had settled into her bones after watching Michael walk out of the courthouse with a new wife who looked flawless without even trying. At 2 in the morning, Lena whispered into the dark, "What do I even have to lose?" By sunrise, after hours of pacing and arguing with herself, she grabbed the card, saved the number, and typed a single message. "I would like to hear the details." She hit send before fear could stop her. Adrian responded 60 seconds later. "Breakfast, 8:30, Hale Tower. Private elevator will be waiting. Hale Tower. The building that pierced the Chicago skyline like a blade of black glass." Lena nearly dropped her phone. She almost canceled. Almost. But 30 minutes later, wearing her cleanest blouse and praying the tiny tear near the seam went unnoticed, she stepped out into the city wind and boarded the blue line toward downtown. Her stomach churned the entire ride. The closer she got, the smaller she felt. When she reached the plaza, Hale Tower rose above her with the kind of cold confidence money could buy. A security guard greeted her at the private elevator as if he had been expecting her. "Miss Hart? Mr. Hale is waiting." The elevator shot upward so fast her ears popped. She stepped into a top-floor dining room, lined with floor-to-ceiling windows that poured sunlight across polished stone floors. Adrian stood near the windows, his suit tailored so perfectly it made Lena hyper-aware of the loose threads on her sleeve. He turned when he heard her footsteps. "You came. You said 8:30, she whispered. "I thought it would be rude not to." A hint of a smile softened his usually reserved expression. "Sit. Eat first, ask questions later." The table was set with fresh fruit, eggs, and coffee that smelled richer than anything she could afford. She hesitated before sitting. "I cannot accept a meal like this." "You can and you will," Adrian replied simply. "You are my guest." Lena Saturday. Her hands shook slightly as she lifted her fork. Adrian watched her, not judging, not pitying, simply observing like he was trying to solve a puzzle with a heartbeat. "Let me be clear," he began. "I am about to finalize a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. My board expects stability in my personal life, especially during negotiations. Investors respond to image as much as numbers. A steady partner beside me keeps the sharks calm." Lena swallowed. "And you expect me to pretend to be that partner?" "Not pretend," Adrian corrected softly. "Perform. There is a difference. This is a role. You show up at 6 events. You stand beside me. You smile when needed. You will always be treated with respect." "And after 3 months?" she asked. "We walk away," he answered. "No strings. No expectations." Lena looked down at her plate. "Why me?" Adrian leaned back in his chair, his voice even. "Because you are not impressed by money. You are not rehearsed. You are real. That is rare in my world." A quiet pause settled between them until Adrian slid a slim folder across the table. "This is the agreement. Review it. If you accept, I will take care of your rent, provide transportation, wardrobe, and financial protection. If you decline, I walk away, and you owe me nothing." Lena opened the folder. 5 simple rules. No physical contact unless required for public events. No sharing private matters with the media. Attend 6 appearances. Maintain professionalism. 3 months only. Her breath trembled. This was not a fairy tale. This was a lifeline disguised as a contract. She lifted her gaze. "What happens if someone asks questions about us?" Adrian's eyes met hers with a calm intensity. "Then I will answer them, and they will believe me." Lena's heart thudded like a drum. She signed. Adrian watched the ink dry, then closed the folder with a quiet finality that felt like the beginning of something dangerous and irreversible. "Welcome to your new life, Miss Hart," he said. In the reflection of the window, Chicago stretched endlessly, as if the whole city were holding its breath for what came next. The contract felt unreal in Lena's purse, as she followed Adrian through the private corridor of Hale Tower toward a suite labeled Image and Protocol. It was only 15 minutes after she had signed, Yet the shift in her life felt seismic, like she had stepped onto a moving walkway she could not step off. The door opened into a studio filled with racks of clothing, soft lighting, and a woman with silver glasses who looked like she had styled half of Hollywood. "This is Mara," Adrian said. "She will help prepare you for the first event tomorrow evening." "Tomorrow evening." Lena's breath caught. "Already?" "Time does not wait for business," Adrian replied. "And neither can we." Mara circled Lena like she was assessing a precious artifact that had been stored in a dusty attic. "Pretty face, genuine eyes. Posture needs work. Wardrobe non-existent but fixable," she announced with clinical precision. Lena blushed, gripping the strap of her purse. Mara waved her toward a fitting area. "Do not look so alarmed, dear. Transformation is my love language." Adrian turned to leave, pausing with one hand on the doorframe. "I have a meeting. Mara will brief you. My driver will take you home afterward." He glanced at her blouse, at the faint tear near the seam. "And Lena," he added, his voice lower, "do not be nervous. You belong here more than you think." Then he disappeared into the hallway before she could ask what he meant. The next 3 hours unfolded like a montage she had stumbled into. Mara introduced a makeup artist, a hair specialist, and a photographer to document baseline details. Lena had never stood under so many bright lights in her life. They tested hairstyles, shades of lipstick, jewelry options, and a dozen evening dresses until Mara declared, "This one, midnight navy." Sophisticated but not intimidating. In the mirror, Lena barely recognized herself. The dress draped over her figure like water. Her hair fell in soft waves instead of its usual frizzy ponytail. Her eyes looked larger, brighter, and for a moment she wondered what Michael would say if he saw her like this. Then she pushed the thought away. He did not matter anymore. What mattered was survival. As the team dispersed, Mara handed Lena a tablet. Protocol briefing. Study this tonight? How to hold a champagne flute, how to greet board members, how to stand beside Adrian without looking stiff. People watch everything. Lena nodded, gripping the tablet like a life raft. "Can I ask something?" "Of course," Mara said. "Why did he pick me?" Mara paused, her expression shifting from professional to almost soft. "Because you do not look like someone who wants anything from him. Men like Adrian drown in people who want pieces of their world. You walked into that elevator looking like someone who had already lost her world. That gets noticed." The words landed deep, heavy, and strangely comforting. As evening approached, Adrian's driver escorted her back to her small apartment. She stepped inside, still wearing the midnight dress because Mara had insisted it needed real-world testing. The contrast between her transformed reflection and the peeling paint on her walls stung unexpectedly. She set down the tablet, the garment bag, and the new shoes, then sat on the edge of her bed. Her studio felt even smaller now, as if her old life had shrunk beside the possibility of her new one. The tablet lit up with a notification that made her pulse quicken. A message from Adrian. "First event is a charity gala. I will pick you up at 6. Do not stress, just be yourself. The rest, I will handle." Lena exhaled shakily, the corners of her lips lifting without permission. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, the fear in her chest mixed with something else. Anticipation, possibility, and the faintest spark of a future she never expected to have. The next evening arrived faster than Lena expected, and by 6 o'clock she stood inside her apartment staring at the midnight navy dress hanging from her closet door. Her hands felt unsteady as she slipped into it, the smooth fabric settling around her like it belonged to a different life, a different woman, one who had never cried outside a courthouse or lived on instant noodles. When she stepped into the heels Mara had selected, her reflection looked like a story someone else had written. A knock at the door made her jump. She opened it to find Adrian's driver standing in the hallway, polished and perfectly composed. "Miss Hart, Mr. Hale is waiting downstairs." Waiting, not summoning, not demanding, waiting. She nodded and followed him to the sleek black SUV idling at the curb. When the door opened, her breath caught. Adrian sat inside, dressed in a tailored black suit that made him look impossibly elegant. He glanced up from his phone, and something in his expression shifted for a fraction of a second. Appreciation, surprise, maybe both. "You clean up well," he said quietly. Lena felt her cheeks warm. "Mara is a miracle worker." "No," Adrian replied, his voice calm. "She just brought out what was already there." The SUV pulled into traffic, Chicago's evening lights stretching across the windshield like ribbons of gold. Lena held the small clutch Mara had given her, rehearsing the protocol notes in her mind. Stand with shoulders relaxed. Smile gently, not broadly. Hold the champagne flute by the stem. Let Adrian lead in conversations. She forced a slow breath. I do not want to embarrass you, she murmured. Adrian looked over. Lena, listen to me. You cannot embarrass me. You only have to be yourself. Myself? She whispered. Myself is a woman who had coupons taped to her refrigerator 3 days ago. A rare, soft smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Then you are more grounded than half the people we are about to meet. They arrived at the Grand Ashton Hotel, a landmark of marble columns and glittering chandeliers. Reporters swarmed the entrance like a storm of clicking shutters and raised microphones. Lena froze. I did not know there would be cameras. There are always cameras, Adrian said, stepping out and offering his hand. The trick is to give them nothing to use against you. She placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, steady, reassuring in a way that felt dangerously comforting. As they stepped onto the carpet, flashbulbs erupted. Mr. Hale, is this your new partner? Who is she? Adrian, any comment on the acquisition? Adrian ignored all of them and leaned toward Lena just slightly. Inhale, smile. You are doing perfectly. Inside the ballroom, golden light washed over crystal centerpieces and silk-draped tables. The atmosphere buzzed with wealth, ambition, and eyes that assessed everything. Adrian guided her through clusters of donors and executives, introducing her in a tone that carried quiet authority. This is Lena Hart. She is with me. Those 4 words shifted the temperature in the room. People smiled wider. Some nodded politely. A few assessed her with thinly masked curiosity. Lena felt her heart pound, but she followed the protocol notes perfectly. She greeted board members with firm handshakes, thanked donors, and held her flute exactly the way Mara taught her. For a moment she almost felt like she belonged. Almost. It happened near the silent auction table. A man with a sharp suit and an ego that arrived 5 seconds before he did stepped into her path. His name tag read, Chairman Douglas. So you are Hale's latest? He asked, his tone dripping with condescension. Tell me, dear, do you have any idea what this event even supports? Lena felt the sting, the old self-doubt crawling up her spine. Before she could answer, Adrian was suddenly beside her, his expression calm but edged with steel. Welcome to your new life, Miss Hart, he said. In the reflection of the window, Chicago stretched endlessly, as if the whole city were holding its breath for what came next. The contract felt unreal in Lena's purse, as she followed Adrian through the private corridor of Hale Tower toward a suite labeled Image and Protocol. It was only 15 minutes after she had signed, yet the shift in her life felt seismic. Like she had stepped onto a moving walkway, she could not step off. I know, he said, but you should not have to handle them alone. As the night went on, something shifted between them. The way Adrian lingered near her, the way he leaned in when she spoke, the way her laughter softened his sharp edges. And for the first time since their contract began, Lena wondered if the biggest danger was not cameras, or donors, or even Michael. The biggest danger might be the way her heart reacted every time Adrian looked at her, like she was no longer playing a role, but becoming something real. The night after the gala lingered in Lena's mind like a dream she was afraid to wake from, and by the time Adrian's driver brought her to Hale Tower the next morning, she still felt the warmth of his hand guiding her away from Chairman Douglas. She kept replaying the moment in her head, asking herself why her heart had reacted the way it did. It was just part of the performance, she told herself. Just Adrian protecting the image they needed to present. But when the private elevator opened and she stepped into Adrian's executive floor, she found him waiting for her near the glass wall, Chicago's skyline glowing behind him like a backdrop built just for him. Good morning, Lena, he said, and there was something different in his tone today. It was softer, almost careful. I wanted to speak to you before we start the next round of preparations. Am I in trouble? She asked lightly. You are many things, Lena, but trouble is not one of them, he said. He gestured toward the conference table where 2 folders were neatly arranged. This is the schedule for the next event. A board dinner. Less public, more political. You handled last night exceptionally well. The compliment pulled heat to her cheeks. I was terrified the entire time. Yet no one could tell, Adrian replied. That is what matters. As he briefed her on seating arrangements and talking points, Lena watched him from the corner of her eye. He was composed, controlled, every movement deliberate. But when he met her gaze, something in him flickered, almost like vulnerability. She wondered if he felt the shift too, the quiet current between them neither of them had acknowledged. The meeting ended with a simple, "I will send a car for you at 5. She nodded and left, clutching the folder like it held instructions to a life she had accidentally stepped into. But the universe had a cruel sense of timing. As she stepped into the lobby of Hale Tower, she froze. Michael stood near the front desk with his new wife, Brittany, perched beside him like a smug ornament. Lena's heart plummeted. She had not seen him since the courthouse. Brittany spotted her first. "Oh my goodness, Lena," she said loudly, making sure everyone nearby heard. "You look upgraded. Thrift stores must be stepping up their game." The receptionist looked uncomfortable. Lena forced a breath. "What do you want, Michael?" He smirked, the expression that used to cut through her confidence like a blade. "I had to drop by for a meeting upstairs. I heard you quit your job. Hard times, huh?" "I am doing fine," she said, but her voice wavered. "Really? Because it looks like you are wandering around buildings you cannot afford to step into. The rest, I will handle." Lena exhaled shakily, the corners of her lips lifting without permission. She had no idea what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long time, the fear in her chest mixed with something else: anticipation, possibility, and the faintest spark of a future she never expected to have. The next evening arrived faster than Lena expected, and by 6 o'clock she stood inside her apartment staring at the midnight navy dress hanging from her closet door. His eyes landed on Lena first, and the tension in her shoulders softened instinctively. Then his gaze moved to Michael, cool and unreadable. "Is there a problem here?" he asked. Michael blinked. "Who are you?" Adrian closed the distance with an energy so controlled it was almost dangerous. "The man she is with." The lobby went silent. Lena felt her pulse hammering in her throat. Michael glanced between them, confusion tightening his jaw. "With you? Since when?" Adrian's expression did not change, but his voice lowered, deliberate and firm. "Since before she realized she deserved far more than what you ever gave her." Brittany's mouth fell open. Michael scoffed. But there was a tremor beneath it. "Her? With someone like you? That is impossible." Adrian stepped even closer to Lena, and for one suspended moment, she forgot they had a contract at all. He reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers with practiced ease but unmistakable warmth. "Impossible?" he said quietly. "Then watch very carefully." Before Lena could process it, Adrian leaned in and pressed a slow, deliberate kiss against her temple, his thumb brushing the back of her hand as if promising she was safe. Gasps rippled across the lobby. Michael's face drained of color. Brittany stopped breathing altogether. Lena felt the world tilt beneath her feet, but not from fear. From the way Adrian's touch felt real, steady, protective. Michael took a stumbling step back, his voice cracking. You cannot be serious." Adrian's gaze never left Lena. "I have never been more serious." And in that breathtaking, disorienting second, Lena realized something terrifying. Her heart believed him. The lobby of Hale Tower was still silent when Michael finally turned away, pulling Brittany with him, as if retreating from a battlefield he had unexpectedly lost. The moment the doors closed behind them, Lena's breath rushed out in a shaky exhale she did not realize she had been holding. Adrian still held her hand, his touch steady, even though her pulse thundered beneath her skin. For a brief second, neither of them moved, neither of them spoke. The kiss on her temple still lingered like a warm imprint of something she was not ready to name. Then Adrian cleared his throat gently and released her hand with a slow, careful motion, as if any sudden gesture might shatter the fragile moment between them. "I apologize," he said quietly. "I should not have crossed that boundary without asking you first." She shook her head quickly. "No, I mean, it is fine. You stepped in, you protected me." His eyes searched hers, steady and unreadable. "Protection is one thing. What I did may have come across as something more." "Something more." The words echoed in her chest, dangerous and magnetic. She forced herself to breathe. You handled it better than I ever could have, she murmured. That is all that matters. The elevator chimed again, and the moment broke. Adrian straightened his suit and gestured toward the doors. We should go upstairs. There are preparations for the board dinner. He spoke formally, but the tone beneath it carried something different, something he was trying to restrain. Lena followed him into the elevator, her mind spinning. The kiss had been part of the act, part of the performance. It had to be. Yet her skin still tingled where his lips had touched, and she felt a heat in her chest she could not explain away. The elevator doors slid open to the executive floor, where Mara and a small team were waiting. Mara's eyes immediately went to Lena's expression, then to Adrian's controlled posture. Her brows lifted slightly, but she said nothing. We need to prepare Miss Hart for tonight's dinner, Adrian said. I want her seated at my right. Mara glanced at him sharply. That is not typical placement for a partner of 3 days. It is my placement, Adrian replied, leaving no room for argument. Lena tried to focus as Mara's team began working, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the lobby, to Michael's stunned silence, to Adrian's voice saying he had never been more serious. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to clear her head. But Mara, sharp and perceptive, noticed. You look like someone who has seen a ghost, she said softly while adjusting Lena's hair. It was my ex-husband, Lena whispered. And Adrian stepped in. Mara paused. Stepped in? How? Lena hesitated. He kissed me. Mara dropped her comb. On purpose? Yes. Mara stared at her like she had just been told the sun had risen in the west. Well, she said slowly, that is going to complicate things. It was part of the performance, Lena insisted quickly. It had to be. But even as she said it, the words tasted unconvincing. Mara leaned in, her voice low. Men like Adrian do not make public gestures unless they mean something. And if they do it in front of someone who once hurt you, it means even more. Lena swallowed. It cannot mean anything. There is a contract. Contracts do not stop hearts, Mara whispered. They only delay them. The words unsettled her. By the time she was dressed for the dinner, a deep emerald dress that contrasted beautifully with her newly softened waves, she felt like a different woman entirely. Stronger, seen, whole. The board dinner was held in a private room at the Hawthorne Club, a polished sanctuary of dark wood and chandeliers. When Adrian arrived to escort her inside, he paused as he looked at her, the faintest breath catching in his chest. You look. He stopped, choosing his words with care. Extraordinary. Heat rushed through her. Thank you. He offered his arm. Shall we? As they stepped inside, conversations hushed. Dozens of powerful executives turned to look at her. Lena felt Adrian's arm tighten just slightly, as if reassuring her she was not alone. Throughout the evening, Adrian guided her with gentle cues, small nods, quiet touches at her elbow. Each one felt intentional, protective, and far more tender than anything a contract required. At one point, a board member asked, How long have you two been together? Lena froze. Adrian did not. He turned to her with a smile so convincing it sent a tremor through her chest. Long enough to know she is the best decision I have made in years. The table murmured approval. Lena's heart nearly stopped. Later, as the dinner ended and they stepped out into the empty hallway, Lena finally whispered the question she had been afraid to ask. Adrian, was any of that still part of the performance? Adrian looked at her for a long, quiet moment, the air thick between them. When he answered, his voice was low and honest. I am beginning to wonder myself. And the world seemed to tilt again, not from fear this time, but from something far more dangerous. The air in the hallway felt too still after Adrian's confession, as if the world itself paused to hear what would come next. Lena's heartbeat thudded in her ears, loud enough that she wondered if Adrian could hear it too. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask what he meant, but before a single word escaped, his phone buzzed sharply in his pocket. The sudden sound sliced through the moment like glass. Adrian exhaled slowly, frustrated, and answered, Hale. His posture stiffened within seconds. What do you mean a leak? From where? Lena's stomach dropped. She stepped back instinctively, giving him space as his tone shifted into the cold, commanding version of himself the business world feared. Find out who talked, he said, and shut it down before it spreads. When he hung up, his jaw was tight, his shoulders tense. What happened? Lena asked softly. Adrian hesitated for a moment, as if choosing his words carefully. Someone leaked to the media that I brought a partner to the gala. They are speculating that it is a distraction tactic before the acquisition closes. Lena felt a knot form in her chest. Is that bad? It complicates things, he said. My competitors will use anything to undermine negotiations, even personal matters. Personal matters. The words made her pulse quicken. Is it because of me? No, he said firmly. It is because people will always search for weaknesses. You are not one. He held her gaze, and something warm flickered between them again. But the moment was short-lived. Mara burst into the hallway, breathless. Adrian, you need to see this. She turned her tablet toward him. On the screen was a headline already spreading across business blogs. Billionaire Adrian Hale appears with mystery woman before major acquisition. Below it were photos of Adrian and Lena at the gala, their hands almost touching, his eyes soft as he looked at her, the protective stance he held near her. Anyone could see there was something there. And that made it dangerous. The board would not like it. Investors would question it. Adrian stared at the screen, his expression unreadable. Mara lowered her voice. You cannot let this get out of control. Lena felt a chill crawl up her spine. I should step back for a while, she whispered. This is my fault. Adrian turned to her immediately, his voice sharp in a way she had never heard directed at her. No, do not say that. You have done nothing wrong. Mara looked between them with a tense expression. He is right, but the optics are delicate. You both need to be extremely careful from here on. The ride back to Hale Tower was quiet. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. Like both of them were thinking the same thing but afraid to say it. When they arrived, Adrian walked Lena to her suite inside the executive floor, a place she rarely used, but was granted access to for private fittings and preparations. She reached for the door handle, but Adrian gently stopped her. Lena, he said. She turned. His eyes were softer than they had been all night, tinged with something that felt dangerously close to worry. If this becomes difficult, if the media makes it unbearable, you can walk away. I will not hold you to the contract. The offer struck her like a blow. Do you want me to walk away? That is not what I said, Adrian replied quietly. I said you could. Her heart twisted. She stepped closer, searching his expression for something solid to hold on to. I can handle the media. I can handle the board. What I cannot handle is not knowing what this is. His breath caught, a faint tremor she almost missed. Lena, he said, her name leaving his lips like a confession. But before he could continue, the sharp echo of footsteps approached. A senior board member rounded the corner, his expression icy. Mr. Hale, he said, eyeing Lena with thinly veiled disdain. A word, now. Adrian straightened, the warmth draining from his posture as he nodded. Of course. The board member glanced at Lena again, his voice low and slicing. This little distraction of yours is becoming a liability. Adrian's jaw clenched. She is not a distraction, he said. She is. He stopped himself, cutting off the sentence before it revealed too much. The board member smirked, as if he had already won. Control the situation, Adrian, or the board will. As the man walked away, Lena felt ice settle in her stomach. Adrian looked back at her, conflict written across his features. I should go, he said, even though neither of them wanted the conversation to end. She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. We will talk later? Yes, he murmured. This is my fault. Adrian turned to her immediately, his voice sharp in a way she had never heard directed at her. No, do not say that. You have done nothing wrong. Mara looked between them with a tense expression. He is right, but the optics are delicate. You both need to be extremely careful from here on. The ride back to Hale Tower was quiet. Not uncomfortable, but heavy. Like both of them were thinking the same thing but afraid to say it. The media frenzy around Adrian's mystery partner escalated, the headlines growing bolder, the questions sharper. Everywhere they went, cameras followed. They dined at the finest restaurants, attended exclusive events, but it was impossible to escape the scrutiny. It seemed like every whispered conversation at a gala, every clink of a glass in a boardroom, came with a question. Is it real? Are they really together? Despite the media circus, Adrian remained composed, always a step ahead. But Lena could feel the weight of every headline, every rumor, settling deeper into her chest. The contract had become more than just a facade. The lines between performance and reality were blurring faster than she could control. One afternoon, a call came through to Lena's phone. She almost didn't recognize the number, but when she answered, it was Michael's voice on the other end. "Lena," he said, his tone surprisingly calm. "I need to talk to you." She stiffened, unsure if she was ready for this conversation. "What do you want, Michael?" "Not what you think," he replied. "I'm not calling to make demands, or to accuse you of anything. I just need to know something." "What?" she asked, her voice tight. "Is it real?" he pressed. "Adrian Hale, are you really involved with him, or is this just another way to get back at me?" Lena's heart sank. She had expected anger, contempt, but not this. Not the vulnerability in his voice. For a moment, she was silent, the weight of the question hanging in the air like an invisible burden. "It's not about you, Michael," she finally said. "It never was. I'm doing this because I need to." There was a pause on the other end of the line before Michael spoke again. "I don't understand," he said quietly. "I thought you were different. You were always there for me, even when I didn't deserve it." The words hit her like a punch to the gut, but she fought to keep her composure. "I was there for you because I believed in us, Michael. But now, I have to believe in myself." Another long pause. "Goodbye, Lena," he said finally, his voice flat. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She hung up, the phone slipping from her fingers as the conversation replayed in her mind. She didn't know if she had expected closure, but she realized then how much she had still been holding on to, how much of herself she had given to someone who was no longer the man she had once known. The evening of the next board dinner, as Lena stepped into the private elevator at Hale Tower, the same feeling washed over her, nervous anticipation mixed with a deep, gnawing uncertainty. She had never imagined her life would look like this, surrounded by billionaires and investors, playing a role she never thought she would take on, and yet she was doing it, pulling off every move with grace, even though inside she felt like an imposter. Adrian was waiting for her when she arrived, looking as composed as ever in his suit. His eyes softened when they met hers, and he gave her a small nod. "Tonight's event will be different," he said quietly, as they walked to the grand hall. "I need you to stay close to me. You are not just my partner for tonight, you are my equal. You have earned that." His words were meant to reassure her, but they only made her more aware of the delicate line she was walking. She nodded, her throat tight. "I'm ready," she said, though she wasn't sure if she truly was. The event was more intimate than the last, with fewer people but higher stakes. The room was filled with heavy hitters from the business world, and the conversation was just as sharp as the crystal glasses in front of them. Lena found herself standing beside Adrian, holding her champagne flute, listening as he spoke with one of the board members about an upcoming project. She didn't need to say much. He took the lead, and she followed his cues. But when the conversation shifted to their recent acquisition, Lena felt the familiar sting of being invisible, as though she were nothing more than a side note in Adrian's world. It was during this conversation that she noticed something that made her heart skip a beat. A man across the room, standing just at the edge of their conversation, was watching her with intent eyes. It was clear he wasn't just curious. He was studying her, calculating something. When their eyes met, he didn't look away. His gaze was sharp, appraising. It made her feel exposed, like she was a target in a game she didn't fully understand. Adrian caught the shift in her posture. His eyes flicked to the man, and then back to her. Without missing a beat, he shifted his position, subtly closing the space between them. His presence was a shield, and the man across the room backed off, turning his attention elsewhere. Lena exhaled, feeling the tension in her body dissolve. Adrian's protective instinct was clear, but it left her wondering, was this all still a contract, or was there more at play here than either of them wanted to admit? As the evening wore on, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that the walls around her were slowly closing in. Every move she made, every word she spoke, felt scrutinized, as if her every decision could tip the balance between success and failure. And yet, when Adrian looked at her, when he took her hand in his and guided her through the evening with a confidence she could not ignore, she wondered if maybe, just maybe, this was no longer just about business. Maybe it was something deeper, something real. The days following the board dinner felt like a delicate balancing act for Lena. On one hand, she was more visible than she had ever been, standing side by side with Adrian in front of some of the most powerful people in the world, attending gala events, making small talk with billionaires. But all the while, the undercurrent of doubt never left her. The media continued to spin their story, each headline more invasive than the last. Adrian Hale's mystery partner. A business move or something more? They asked. And every time Lena saw those words, she felt the weight of her own uncertainty pressing down harder. She had become more than just a contract. She was living the life she had never dared dream of, but with every moment, she wondered how much of it was real, how much of it was still part of the act. It was late one evening, after a particularly grueling round of meetings, that Adrian finally addressed what had been hanging between them. They were back in his private office, the lights low, and the skyline of Chicago stretched out in the distance like a living, breathing city beneath them. Lena had just sat down to gather her things when Adrian closed the door behind him and leaned against it, his expression unreadable. "Lena," he began, his voice carrying an unusual weight, "we need to talk." She froze, her stomach turning. "What about?" "About us," he said quietly. "About everything." Her breath caught. "What do you mean, everything?" Adrian moved toward her, his gaze locked on hers, intense but not unkind. "I told you this was a contract, a business arrangement, but I never told you what it was doing to me." "I don't understand," she said softly, her pulse quickening. Adrian's jaw tightened, and for a moment it seemed like he was searching for the right words. "I didn't plan for this. I didn't plan for you." Lena's heart skipped a beat, her mind racing as she tried to process his words. "Adrian, I don't know what you're trying to say." He exhaled slowly, stepping closer to her. "What I'm trying to say, Lena, is that this," he motioned between them, "it's not just a business arrangement for me anymore. It's not just a contract. It's real." Lena's breath caught in her throat. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came out. Everything she had thought she understood about their relationship, the contract, the roles they had been playing, the boundaries they had set suddenly seemed meaningless. Adrian reached out, taking her hand gently in his. "You are more than just a partner to me. You're more than an obligation. I care about you. I didn't plan for that, but I can't deny it anymore." Lena stood frozen, her mind and heart warring with each other. The life she had built, the security she had found in this arrangement, suddenly felt fragile, like it could all fall apart with a single word. "Adrian, I don't know what to say," she whispered. "I never expected any of this. I never expected to feel like this." He nodded slowly, his thumb brushing over her hand. "I know. But I'm not asking for an answer right now. I'm just asking you to trust me." The silence between them hung heavy, each word he spoke carrying a weight she couldn't ignore. Lena closed her eyes for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. "I've trusted you," she said quietly. "I've trusted you more than I ever thought I could. But this is different, and I don't know if I can keep pretending it's not." Adrian's gaze softened, a quiet understanding passing between them. "We don't have to pretend anymore," he said gently. "Not if you don't want to." The simplicity of his words was almost enough to break her. Lena's hand trembled in his as the realization settled in. She had come so far, and she had finally found something she wasn't willing to let go of. It wasn't the contract that had kept her here. It wasn't the promises of wealth or security. It was him, Adrian Hale, a man who had been her protector, her partner, and in a way she couldn't fully articulate, something more. She looked up at him, the uncertainty that had clouded her thoughts finally starting to fade. "I don't want to pretend anymore," she said softly, her voice steady. "But I need to know if this is real for you too." Adrian stepped closer, his eyes locking with hers, and for the first time, he didn't hold back. "It's real, Lena. It has been for a while." The words hung in the air between them, and for a moment, everything else faded away. The world outside the office, the expectations, the rumors, the contract, it all seemed distant, irrelevant. All that mattered was the quiet, simple truth they had finally acknowledged. And in that moment, Lena realized that what she had feared most wasn't the unknown or the future. It was the possibility that she could lose the one thing she had come to value most. Not the money, not the status, but Adrian, the man who had stepped into her life unexpectedly, offering her a chance at something she never believed she deserved. And for the first time in her life, she was ready to take that chance, ready to trust, to love.